Yeah, no, it sounds
Okay.
good. I used my last bit of pomade for this, but it's humid right now. So,
Special occasion.
oh yeah,
Yes.
I'm gonna have to go out. Anyways, I spent way too much time on worrying about my hair. I should just go
Not
year
me.
round. Just
Exactly. Freedom. Yeah.
no, well, I appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on, man. Really appreciate it because I saw a post that you did. I guess it was about a month ago now, probably,
It
and
was. Yep.
it had to do with your area being just a few points above the line to where they would actually start doing free lunches or something like that. Can you kind of just walk me through what the situation was?
Yeah. So there was a point when it first started where they were still using, I don't know exactly how the metric works, but you have to have a certain level of poverty in your community in order to continue to receive free and reduced lunches. I don't think it was like that in all states, but it was like that in Missouri. And so as a result, all of our free and reduced lunch families, weren't able to send their kids to get food. In the summers, that's a big concern of ours anyways. We have a lot of students at the church who are in need. And so it's already like a big focus of ours in the summer to come up with some meals and some food and things like that. So the thought that they wouldn't have it for the extended future. Now, luckily, that only lasted a week and a half before some sort of aid came in that allowed all the schools in the area to be
Okay,
able to
so
get food.
it started coming in.
Yes,
Oh, that's
yes.
great.
So as stuff started to move along, they were finally able to get that. So we moved from doing meals every day to doing grocery deliveries to all those families. So we're serving 60 to 80 families every week,
Oh wow,
delivering them groceries to their front door. And
that's
we
awesome.
did partner with the school to kind of get those names. The way it worked was the school said, "Hey, listen, Evangel Church is going to keep doing this. If you all want it, just respond to this email, and we'll give them your information."
Okay.
And so it worked well. And
So
and
did you have
then
to work kind
the
of?
other
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, yeah, and then the other people are shut-ins that we really focus on. So
Mm,
it's about half and half, half families, free and reduced lunch families, half shut-ins
okay. What do you mean
in
shut-ins?
our community.
Shut-ins before all this happened, or shut-ins after?
Yeah, some of them. We have a big assisted living community here, and a lot of them depended on somebody bringing them stuff, just in general.
And that's in Archie.
And yes,
Okay.
yeah, we're in rural America. The town's 1,000 people, and as a result, there's not very many stores and groceries. You got to drive 15 minutes to get to one, and so there's a lot of people who don't have that kind of mobility. And one lady the first week just said, if you guys hadn't come this week, I wouldn't have had food. And then we've heard a story like that about every week since.
Wow.
Just,
How's that feel?
it's, well, obviously you just worry about them, but then you're really thankful that you get to feed them in this time. And like you said, the truth is, I can think of a few cases where there was issues before this started, just people didn't know. So once all this started happening and we started going door to door and figuring out needs, you're right. There was things that were an issue before this ever started. And now we just know.
What do you mean with
So
like access to goods or
access to food and
so this kind of was help
access
bring
to
all
food.
that to the surface?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, why were those issues kind of hidden?
One thing I'm still learning about rural America. I did not grow up in rural America, but we've spent the last 6 years here. And
Where'd you grow up before?
when there is Springfield, Missouri,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's like a town of like 200,000.
Yeah.
So so it's a big adjustment for us. So
100,000 to 1,000.
exactly, yeah. And while we were engaged, I was in Wuhan and Megan was in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City. So Ho Chi Minh City's got 10 million. I was in a city of 10 million.
So you're actually
But
in
then
Wuhan
when
at this point?
Yeah, can you believe that?
Imagine that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, ground zero before it was ground
Did you
zero.
ever visit
Yeah,
any
I
of the
love
wet
that
markets
place.
just to see what they were like?
No,
No,
no.
man. That would have
Or
been
maybe I
really
didn't hear you
cool.
right.
Did you ever
Visited what now? Sorry.
did you ever visit any of the wet markets to see what they were like?
Oh no, no,
No.
I didn't. I mean, there was like there was
That
food
jerky.
vendors on the street. Yeah, I don't know. We were told like you probably shouldn't eat the street food, and I ate it every day. It tasted so good. So I don't know. Maybe I'm the problem. But that was a long time ago. That's when we were engaged. We've been married 7 years, so that was a long time ago. But yeah, tell me about yourself. How'd you get into making these podcasts, and what's the goal of the podcast?
Um, Kind of like the goal of it, how I got into it is it's kind of a long story, but the goal of it was to basically humanize Judeo-Christian leaders. A lot of
Okay.
exposure that I see that Judeo-Christian leaders get is usually satirical and played for comedy and over the top, and in some ways realistic, but in a lot of ways not realistic at all. And then the other half of it, mostly what's represented in media, is Catholicism, which is usually represented for the mythical aspects of Catholicism and not the philosophical aspects. So that was just basically that's the premise and purpose, to humanize the church and ask like real questions of that I feel like a lot of people have, stuff like that. And then to bring like stuff
For
that's
sure.
that's kind of why I wanted to do this like during the coronavirus stuff that's going on, is
Mhm.
to just show how kind of highlight how necessary the church really is, especially in times like this.
Sure. Yeah. Have we started? Or are you going to use this, or
No,
do you
we
like
yeah, we
start
started.
top and then we do a show?
Yeah, no,
We
no.
did. Okay. Sorry. Sorry.
So how'd you go from being a missionary in Wuhan to being a pastor in Archie?
Yeah. So we I just did a summer in Wuhan, and I did it through an Assemblies of God program, scholarship program through the school I went to, and it was a phenomenal experience.
Was it SAGU?
My wife served. Do what now?
Was it SAGU or a different, or like a Missouri?
Yes, 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 SAGU. Yep. So I did SAGU as my undergrad, and so yeah, so that was a wonderful experience. And my wife and I were engaged at the time, and so we were both kind of in restricted areas or whatever, so we didn't get to talk very much. But we got to fly home together. So we got to South Korea and flew home, and we had been praying. As soon as we landed, we were going to get married in like 3 weeks. Everything was going to get going. So we are going to land, all that, and figure out our life next, because we hadn't figured it out. So we definitely considered. I mean, that's kind of a weak word. I mean, we were really thinking we might end up overseas. Loved Asia, loved every bit of it. Both my wife and I were in multiple countries in Asia. Yeah, it was just fantastic, and like God is just moving in
Did y'all plan
incredible
out
ways.
flying home together, or did it just work out that way?
It kind of just worked out amazingly. Yeah, yeah,
That's pretty awesome.
it was great. So yeah. So anyways, and then we got back, and we both wanted to do some more schooling. So we went to Springfield to Evangel University for our master's degrees. And while we were there, we did traveling youth ministry. So
What does that look
while
like?
we were working on those degrees, yeah, so basically just retreats and camps and stuff like that, and just taking that opportunity to share the gospel with students. And while doing that, we got connected with a pastor near the Kansas City area, and he said, "Hey, there's this community. It's small, and the church is about to close its doors. Would you consider, just kind of preaching here and praying about it? Because we're considering making it a part of our church network, helping it get off the ground again." And so we came and we did that, and we immediately thought when we got here, no way. We couldn't even find it on Google Maps at first. We were like, that we put it, like, why isn't it, there's something not working here. So finally, though, we made it, and we got here, and we came here on a Sunday morning to encourage those 6 people that were here. And we got in our car, And we sat there and we're like, oh my goodness, we're called to this. And and we just both knew. And so we said, let's do it. And the few people who were here actually decided to move on. And so then we just kind of started from scratch. And just kind of just let the Lord lead. We were like, let's give it a year and see if anything can happen. If we can get anything off the ground. And it did. And so we've been here for 6 years.
So as far as being brought into a network, I mean, what does that look like, and what kind of support are you able to get?
Yeah, so we're really we're part of the Evangel Church Network, and so it's best understood as one church in multiple locations. A lot of people say that, but it's live preaching. It's like a collaborative model. It's not a video venue. So we like work together. We benefit from the resources. They're an established church. They're 90 years old. The church that started this. So technology, resources, mentoring. I was only 23 when we started, so I needed a lot of help, even just figuring out how to be a pastor.
Gosh,
so
I can imagine trying to be. I don't have the gentle verbiage to be a pastor. So especially at 23. Oh my goodness, my wife has helped me calm down so much. There's so many times she knows I'm about to say something and she squeezes my arm, so I know to shut up.
That's good. Yeah. Well, it's certainly been a learning experience. Yeah. So we need a lot of help. And the mentoring has just been incredible. Really thankful for it. So definitely have grown more in the last 6 years than I ever have in any other period of my life. So yeah. And
so is it like a network of multiple?
It's been great.
Or is there like an admin?
Yeah.
Kind of overseeing everything? Or?
So we were actually their first go at doing this, and then more are planned. So we were kind of the ground level one to see if it would work. And the Kansas City campus of our church is in Kansas City. It's an urban area, and we are really rural. And it's amazing that just 40-minute drive can separate you like that. But in Missouri, it can. I don't know about other states. In Missouri, you just boom, all of a sudden you're in the middle of nowhere. Just the conviction is that planting churches is one of the most effective ways to evangelize, to tell people about Jesus. And because that's true, anything we can do to resource and train and help, and we should be doing that. So
it sounds like your church, it started off on the digital side and pushing everything towards the internet. Did I hear that correctly? Like that was a big part of it?
No, not first. Actually, at the beginning, it was all about connecting with the community. There's this old saying that in urban areas, your preaching allows you to pastor. People allow you to pastor them because they know that you're like a competent communicator and organizer. In rural communities, you got to pastor before they want to hear you preach. And that's definitely been true here. It's about relationship. You got to build trust. You got to be a part of the community. And even beyond that being true, there's just so much to learn. I mean, education's been a big part of my family and my life and all that. But moving to a rural community helped me realize how ignorant I am about so many things. Everybody's so competent and hardworking and detail-oriented. And I just it's like a whole new school here. I just feel like I've learned so much from seeing how people live in a rural context.
What do you mean? Do you mean preconceived notions about rural areas or stuff like that? Or what do you mean?
Well, I do think there certainly is a divide right now in our nation between rural and urban. You can just look at any political map and you can see the coloration. And there's just different worldviews, and as a result, there tends to be a lot of characterization from rural communities about urban communities, from urban communities about rural communities. And the truth is, there's just not that much dividing us, and there's a lot to be gained. Well, I think both ways of living are completely legitimate and great, and there's a lot to be gained. Let me just put it this way: if there were more conversations, I think there'd be a lot more common ground found. So even myself, not growing up rural, I had preconceived notions that had, I think, been corrected. And again, just educated, like, I love being a part of a community that is naturally neighborly, like committed to being a neighbor. I had never experienced that. Growing up in suburbia, just never experienced like that much cohesion, I guess. It's I've learned a lot from being here.
Yeah, I haven't really experienced that too much. I mean, I've grew up in pretty much the suburbs my whole life, and we just moved, and I still haven't really met my neighbors. I mean, not past waving at them and smiling and being polite.
Right.
In more of those suburban areas, you seem to choose your community because everything's so, such a large area, and the population is so dense. Seems like you're able to choose your community a little bit more, rather than in a rural area where there's 1,000 people in the town. Obviously, everybody can know everybody. And so how is that kind of culture shock, going from a place where you can kind of get to choose your community to you're completely entwined with your community?
Yeah, well, culture shock's a good word for what we experienced initially. Even just like the distance from any sort of amenities and groceries and all those sorts of things, that's a big transition and all that. But on the community side, I actually think it's pretty healthy to be that committed to your neighbor. So it's not just about like, hey, we agree on things and we like each other, like you said. You choose your friends. You don't choose your neighbors. You choose to be neighborly, And so I think I needed to learn that. And this environment really helped me see how to do it even. So just being committed to being there, to being a resource. Somebody's tractor breaks down, you pull it out together. You find a way just to give each other a hand.
From experience.
Yeah. So it's a different lifestyle. It's a great lifestyle. So
Going back to what you said, I haven't heard that before, but it makes completely sense. Where in urban areas they want you to preach and then they'll let you pastor, whereas in rural areas they want you to pastor and then they'll hear you preach. What do you think the difference is there in mindset?
Well, I think it's really important in rural areas that you're one of us. That you are a part of the community, that you're committed to this thing. Whereas typically urban areas are more professional. You're talking about the difference between blue collar and white collar jobs, and more professional people, and professional people want to see a professional person and know that they're, very competent in their profession, and their speaking and their organization, as an organizational leader of a church. And I mean, I don't have a ton of experience really in urban. I basically just have suburban and rural, but that would be my guess. So
I gotcha. And I'm wondering where like the tipping point of that would be, like whenever, as far as population base, when it would start to tip the other way. But it's interesting that like that kind of tribalism aspect of a rural environment that I guess doesn't. I mean, you see it in movies every once in a while that comes up about, we're a close-knit group and we don't like outsiders kind of things. How hard was it to become a part of the community and feel accepted by the community?
Hard. Yeah. You had to be really intentional. So like, just to give a little bit of our story, we had a church building, but no people and no relationships at first. So we just spent every day trying to meet people and build relationships. I played soccer in college, and so I just would go out to the soccer fields every day where there was, a lot of students and parents in the community, and I would just have a soccer ball and do pickup games and then just try to meet as many people as I could. And that really kind of opened things up. Eventually, actually not long after I was here, the soccer coach asked me to be an assistant. And so then I started being an assistant for the high school team and just making more relationships that way and just trying to take advantage of every time you see a neighbor, introducing yourself and all of that. But it was a long road, and we just had to like continually serve and be committed to loving people. And the other thing is, like, I think you feel a part of people's lives even if they're not a part of your church, which is something I really like. Like, maybe, there's all sorts of great reasons not to come to our church, so they've got a reason where, maybe they've already got one, or they're not sure where they land on faith yet or anything like that. Great. But that doesn't prevent us from like having that kind of relationship where it's like, you can call me and let's work on something together. Let's work on solutions together. So that's been a really, again, a great part. But to your point, it took a lot of commitment to build those relationships and build that trust. We're 6 years in. Probably last year was the first year I felt I would have described it the way I'm describing it now.
Really? Wow. So it did definitely take a long while. And was it like just kind of an air of suspicion towards you?
No, I don't think that's the right word. I just think it's like, I don't know. Let me ask you this. When's the last time you made new adult friends?
Oh, man. That's a good question. And like not coworkers?
Right.
That you have to get along with? That's a good point. A real good point. It's been a while. Honestly, I don't know, like including through institutions or just like out of the blue kind of friend.
I don't know. Anyway, either way. I mean,
oh man, it's probably been a while then. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't go out looking for friends usually.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying. So like whether you're rural or urban or suburban, it's no longer natural to just become a part of people's lives. And so, I think in a rural context, when somebody's new though, so it adds like a different dynamic. Like in urban, you're like, I don't know you, and
nobody knows each other. So
it's like, we've all got our lane already. Yeah. But in rural, it may feel more personal that you're not connecting because that people are aware of you. But it's not like people are behaving differently here.
I got you.
You just feel it differently.
Put it. I know, and you see that with dating apps, dating websites. You get to really select the features of a person that you think you'll get along with, which kind of seems to help contribute to this kind of divide that we almost seem to have lost the art to carry on conversations with people who we do not agree with on axiomatic levels. Which there's a passage in the Bible. I forget what I was reading, but who was? I don't remember what it was, but it was during a Bible study, and it was interesting to me that whenever this disciple went to these people, at first they treated him great, even though they were like, "Oh, we don't believe in God at all. That might be the craziest thing I've ever heard, but we're going to treat you great." And then years later, whenever he visited them back, they were radicalized by other philosophies on the Judeo-Christian religion, and they started treating him really poorly, which was interesting. It's very interesting to me this isn't new. That kind of aspect of living in communities isn't new at all. Oh, sorry, that was my chair. Yeah. But so I was listening to someone talk, and they were saying that the differences between two people in a same group will be more than the average of two entirely different groups, which I thought was really interesting. That definitely seems to be the case in a lot of people who describe their experiences with that.
Right. And I think as far as like, no matter where you're at, what kind of context, rural or urban, you got to consider what kind of communities am I a part of? And as you were saying, do I spend time with people who think differently than me? Because, man, it's just so unhealthy to live in an echo chamber.
Mm.
And obviously it's easy to do on social media, but it's also easy to do just in real life. And, during this temporary shutdown, one of the advantages is we got a chance to reflect and think, okay, so when things get going again, what things should I drop and what things should I pick back up?
Oh yeah.
We're going to reset, but does anything need to be different when I start up again? Because that was a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And
my wife and I have been talking about that, because all of a sudden we have our weekends again. Like all of a sudden we can spend time together as a family. It seemed like for so long, because I do photography and video stuff on the side, usually like weddings and stuff, and small business stuff. But it was just every single weekend. It seemed like. I remember in February, I was like, oh, I finally have a break in March. And all of a sudden my calendar, a few things were canceled because, for obvious reasons, but my calendar all of a sudden just filled up that month, which monetarily, yeah, it's great. But I was like, oh, I have to go be away from my wife and kid for every single weekend again. And it was an interesting point to just like pause and be like, man, it's actually really nice to have the time to do to be able to have the time to take care of our responsibilities and to do things that we want to do intentionally and not just feel obligated to do, because the calendar so many times gets filled up with obligations and not things that you really want to do. I don't know, have you experienced that, or have you still been keeping real busy?
Yeah, this is the strangest season. I mean, obviously for everyone, it's just like I've never experienced anything like this. And the hours are really long, but they're really different because within them, I'm spending a ton of time with the kids. But because I'm working really early in the morning and really late. We've kind of got a rhythm. We both have full-time jobs and don't have childcare available anymore. And so we're trying to make schedules where, I'm working from like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then she can have the middle of the day and then picking back up, later at night. I mean, just like sure you guys are doing, just trying to find time to fit it all. So it's no longer compartmentalized. It's all just bled together, which at times has been extremely stressful and different. And then at times been just like, when I have the right attitude about it, like there's so many advantages to this. So yeah, I'm a very task-driven person. I do think I thrive when I can just set my environments and set my time and all that. But then there's also so much good about, like you're saying, we might never have another season like this. I hope we don't.
Yeah,
so
it's definitely important to make the most.
What can we get out of it?
And I agree with you. I'm like, there's times whenever I would need to just sit down and edit, and I got to close my office door. But first, I got to clean my office and then make everything just perfect. And then I can really focus. And I'm also someone who I do value my alone time. And normally that's whenever I'm on my way to work and on my way home, and I get to be alone. I get to listen to music and just kind of, I get to think. And I've been working from home, and I've been really fortunate. I don't mean to sound like I'm complaining at all, because we've obviously been really fortunate that we haven't been impacted the way other people have been impacted. A lot of people I know, but doing a full-time job and watching a kid full-time, and it becomes a lot. I had my mental breakdown pretty early. I was like, oh, sure. This is ridiculous. I can't deal with this, especially because our son isn't really sleeping through the night yet. We've had about 6 days, and he's 10 months. I think he's 10 months, around 10 months. And about 6 days when he slept from 7 to I think 5:30, which were amazing days. and they always
Yeah.
come in clusters. It's like 2 nights. Is this the new normal? And then the third night, nah, just kidding.
I had a child just like that. I got my first child was like that. My second one, he sleeps. God bless him. So yeah,
that's fantastic.
yeah. Not to rub it in, but yeah,
No, I don't hold it.
It is brutal.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, and all that bleeds in too now. But yeah, it's just there's no nothing's compartmentalized.
No,
you gotta just make it all work and
in real time, and everything's changing.
Yeah.
Today, my wife works at a hospital, and she recently she has been typically getting held up, because of everything that's been going on, and that happened again today. And I was able to get my sister over here to look after my kids so we could do this. And yeah, but everything's in real time, just bleeding together, and you do the best you can.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But a buddy of mine texted me a couple of days ago, and he was like, "Hey, how you doing? Just wanted to check up on you." And I was like, it's actually starting to feel really weird that this is starting to feel normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've been doing this because it takes 21 days to build a habit, and this has been going on for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so
yes,
this is feeling normal is just strange.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And even trying to just think ahead, how do you prepare for what's next? How do you prepare for when things do return? And depending on your state, things are about to happen this week to kind of open things back up, and it's just gonna be fascinating to see how all that works. There's such I think one truth that's always there, but that we don't always really believe, that's kind of come out for everyone during this, is that we're not in control. Like we're not in control. And even as leaders make all these really difficult decisions to try to bring some sort of structure and stability and make everything work, there's this other element where you're like, well, I hope what they do works, because who knows,
you have to really knows? Trust that the people in charge are smarter than you.
Sure, that's the dream.
Right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And it's funny that, we're trying to start, they're going to try to start opening things up and everything. And it just seems to happen so fast. So like, you need to take this seriously, take this seriously. Okay, now get back out there.
Sure. Right.
Like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people like, I don't want to get back out there.
For sure. Yeah.
So where do you kind of stand on all of this as far as, like, have you even had the time to even kind of like contemplate and think about, I don't want to say the politics of it, but the implications that this has had on the country in a few different ways. Like, like we've seen the stories about pastors getting arrested for different reasons. Like, have you had a chance to even kind of contemplate on that, being a pastor, or are you just kind of just focusing on what you need to get done?
No, I mean, I've been thinking about it. Martin Luther lived through a plague, a horrible, horrible plague, the plague. And he wrote that it was his belief that he should do everything he can to comply with the regulations and suggestions of the government leaders, and that he would be a good neighbor in part by following these regulations. But then he also just left this room at the end where he's just like, and when the Spirit of God moves me, I'm going to go. Like, I'm going to help my neighbor. When somebody's really in need and I can help, I'm still going to help. I'm still, and I think basically what he was saying is, I'm still going to be who I am in the midst of all this. So I'm going to try to comply and do those sorts of things. There is something to an organized strategy. In my opinion, I think that the actions that we've taken I think there's enough data to suggest that they have lowered the curve and all that. So I don't think it's been fruitless. But yeah, beyond all that, like, so like, let's say, you know, they shut down churches, I don't know, for a year or whatever. Well, this is a big identity question. You know, is your church more than a building? Is the church more than a building? Can you stop the church? Because in my opinion, you can close a building, but you can't stop the church. And, you know, if we weren't able to meet in the ways that we used to meet, we'd meet in new ways. I mean, it's just, again, it's about, is it who you are? Because if it's who you are, the circumstances, they change how you do things. They're not going to change what you do. They're not going to change what you're committed to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel about it. I hope that we're discipling people in a way that they're like, hey, you know, whatever happens, I'm going to find a way to have community. I'm going to connect with other people. I'm going to find ways to serve my neighbor. I'm going to do everything I can to, be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it's kind of exposed how, and I'm not even going to say churches, but how leaders are able to adapt well to cultural changes. And I think anytime there's a cultural change, that the leaders who can't adapt to it kind of get exposed into, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say exposed, but it just shows probably a weakness and an unwillingness into move forward and try something new. Because a big part of that has been, churches doing online stuff, and that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. And
right,
and it's weird, like
right.
Like normally whenever I do a podcast, I spend an hour setting everything up, and I have the lights and everywhere and the camera set up, but everything else is actually really dark, so I get to really focus. You know, I have like 3 empty NOS cans right here and a mug and my camera right here and 2 mouses for my computers, and so there's a lot going on here. Not to mention, like the other ones I was doing before this were live, which is a whole other thing. And so it's just, it is a strain point. It's a stress point, but it's just really interesting seeing who's using this as an excuse to kind of stay complacent as to what they've always been doing, and who's using this to dive head forward into trying something new and trying a different way to be the hands and feet in the community.
Yeah, I think that's well put. The truth is, there are some people who are always looking for fuel in the war that they're already fighting culturally. And this is just easy picking, just one more thing to fuel a fight that was already going on. I don't know how we've got time for that right now. There's no time to just pick all these cultural fights. Like, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to be the people of God. And the people of God are beautiful when they're doing what they're supposed to do, what they're called to do. That's what it means to shine. And I really do believe that the darker it gets, the more you shine. And, I recognize that people listening to this podcast probably have various faith perspectives. But I also am praying right now for those who are having a moment where they're saying, maybe for the first time in a long time, I think I need something. Like, this whole narrative that I'm just a cosmic accident, while I can get there intellectually, there's another part of me that knows that's not quite right. And it's a knowing that's going beyond my intellect. I can't shake it because, man, I know that life matters and that it's got a purpose. And I just can't just say, oh, whatever happens, happens, because something in me knows there's a purpose to this.
It's funny how people romanticize that, because have you ever watched Doctor Who?
No.
There was an episode, it's fine. There was an episode where he basically is telling this girl, oh, that this stuff happened a million miles, or a million years in the past, and all this stuff came together so you could be here today. And people, it was like a post on Facebook. It was from an episode, and people were like, oh, that's beautiful when you think about it. And I was like, he's telling her that she's an accidental space dust accident. This isn't like poetry. I don't know why people are so enamored with this idea that you told her to her face that she has no point or purpose. I don't understand why this is romanticized. So I think, yeah, because every culture on earth has some type of religion. So there's definitely something to people having this underlying feeling of that there is something a bit more grandiose to life than an accident.
Yeah. I think the narrative always goes, oh, like when you're super needy, you're desperate and you're not thinking. But couldn't it be just as true that when you feel pressure and you recognize the importance of life, that maybe a truth is being unearthed? And maybe it's not just you grasping for straws. Maybe it's something that's always been there. And in this pressure cooker and this intensity, it's coming alive. And, you know, and I get that not everybody believes that, but I just think there are people, and maybe even people listening to this, who are having those kind of moments lately. And our goal as a church, my goal as a pastor, is to be a resource for those people to kind of discover what's happening and to be part of that journey.
Mm. For the people that you've had exposure to, because I see a lot of stuff on Facebook, obviously, but there was another post like, oh, you know, people are having a real problem with anxiety right now. I'm sure that's happening in urban areas,
yes.
in suburban areas. Is that happening in rural areas as
yes.
well? It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I counsel people through anxiety every day of this. I mean, not before this, but every day I have conversations about anxiety. And there are times where I'm talking to myself through anxiety, you know, because so fear is the proper response to certain stimulus. We're designed to respond to certain stimulus with fear. That means our body's working. And I think that there are times and there's information that we get right now during the season that makes us feel fear. And I don't think that's like unspiritual, but I think what happens after that has a big impact on your spiritual life. I always try to think of it like a wave. It needs to come in, and I worry about people who are trying to pretend like there is no fear and they don't have any, they're not wrestling with it. You need to let it come in, but then it should also come out like a wave. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say this about faith in Jesus. For me, faith in Jesus, he is that rock. I stand on that rock. So when it comes, I also know it goes. Because when you get to the very bottom of fear in the Christian mindset, the worst things that could happen are not that bad. You go to the very bottom. What's the worst thing? You could lose your life. Well, in Christ, he's gone to that bottom. He's endured our biggest fear, death, isolation from God, suffering. He's endured all of that so that we know that if we go through that, we'll come out the other end. Mm. We just had Easter. There's a hole in the back of the grave, and it's never going to be repaired. He broke death. So it just changes the way that we process the anxiety. It doesn't mean that we no longer have it.
I gotcha. And because I saw there was a lot of talk about how, you know, I'm not going to live in fear and, you know, hashtag not afraid. A lot of hashtag not afraid stuff. And the funny thing to me was that fear is psychologically imperative to human beings' survival. And it's been that way since forever. And to all of a sudden wear it as a mark of pride that you're not afraid. Like, well, then there's something about you that's not being smart. Because there's first of all, there's threats everywhere. You should always be afraid of something in a lot of ways. Now, how you process it's like if you're afraid, that automatically makes you weak to some people in a sense. But it seems to be that if you know how to use fear as a utility, it makes you stronger in a lot of ways. And like, let's say if the worst was to happen, unfortunately to some people, especially someone who was, you know, hashtag not afraid. Well, you're either going to be afraid now and deal with it and make the necessary precautions and take the necessary precautions, or you're going to be afraid later when it's too late. And so that was, and in a previous web episode that I did, To me, it seemed like, and the person I was talking to disagreed with me, but to me, it seemed like we've kind of lost the ability to deal with fear in a lot of ways, to deal with fear in a healthy way.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Full disclosure, I grew up with counselors. So in the home. So my dad and my sister, my older sister. Yeah. So no, it's hardwired in me that you should not repress your feelings and your emotions, that they're there for a reason. And I'll just say this on the faith side, God's not afraid of them. Read your Bible, read through Psalms. I mean, all of that is like open space. We can express and feel any emotion. Never does God interrupt and strike somebody down with lightning. Instead, there's this openness. He's not afraid of our anger, our doubt, our fear, any of that. And the idea that ignoring it somehow makes it go away, that's just not true.
Yeah.
And I think of friends of mine who have kind of moved away from faith, who had a lot of this earlier in their life, and were told just to ignore it. And I really think it was detrimental in the long run, because it didn't go away, especially the doubts, especially the anger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got a problem in your house. If you ignore it, it doesn't help.
Yeah. Yeah. There was this old story about, and I think I mentioned in one of my previous podcasts about this little boy who comes home with an imaginary dragon, or with a dragon, and every time the boy like tries to show his mom the dragon, the mom's like, I don't see a dragon, and every time she says she doesn't see it, the dragon gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's just it's an undeniable issue.
Right.
There, like it's busting through the house, and it's a children's story, but it was very concise on the message that it was trying to point out, which is, you have to deal with it, or else it's gonna, it's gonna basically, you have to deal with it, or it's gonna deal with you, kind of thing. Like you can choose your limitations early on, or your limitations are gonna choose you. One of them is gonna have, or someone else is gonna choose your limitations. And but so, and like I said, I had my mental breakdown on this, like in the second week that this all happened, and which I found out, like, looking back into my childhood, I was a high anxiety child. Things that I didn't even realize that I'm reading now today are symptoms of a high anxiety person. I realize now that I was a high anxiety child and I didn't even know. Like I had some problems, but like at the same time, I don't know how to process my feelings towards anxiety around this, because it's not like we're going off to fight a war. To do the right thing, you literally just need to stay in your home. And I have problems processing those feelings of anxiety in myself whenever it's a pretty cush thing of responsibility that's on a person during this time. And so I don't know. I just don't know how to deal with that.
No, and it's a harder one to deal with, because when there is a task that's causing you to fear, you try to use that energy to develop a strategy to figure out your way through. Like you're saying, like if you're going to war, you end up in a battle, that's the kind of stress you have. This is just the unknown, just like the constant unknown. What if it comes to me? I have no control. Whatever I do with this fear, it's not going to change me, other than like you said, like the very easy step of choosing not to go out or whatever. But yeah,
that's a really good point, actually, because have you seen Band of Brothers?
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
There's whenever Pierce is talking to Blythe, I don't know if you remember that conversation, but he's like, whenever I landed, I hid in the ditch, and he was like, do you know why you hid in that ditch? He was like, I was afraid. Like, we're all afraid. We're all scared. And he's like, you hid in that ditch because you haven't accepted the fact that you're already dead. As soon as you accept that, you're going to be able to function the way a soldier is supposed to function. And I think there's a lot to that about, it wasn't fear that was holding him back. It was the unknown that was holding him back. It was the chaos of the unknown. And I think that's a really good point to bring up, because there's a lot of unknown right now. And it's hard to, you can't like and I'm not downplaying war, saying war would be easier than this on any level whatsoever. But the unknown is whether or not you're going to live or die. So if you process things through the lens of I'm going to die, so I'm going to do what I need to do. Well, here we really don't know what to process because there's so many things that could happen. Like you lose your job, or you die, or your family members die, or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of unknown variables that that's a little bit of an epiphany moment for me actually on this whole thing, on why it's been so stressful.
Yeah. I think we're used to being in control. There's a problem, we can fix it. There's an economic problem, the state can fix it. If there's nobody's gone without food. Even the poor in our country have food. So it's like, it's like all of a sudden it's like, well, but what if we're not completely in control? Like, what if something breaks down, or what if my job and my livelihood breaks down? Yeah, it's just like there's nothing you can do about it. You know, and that's what makes it difficult. And like I said, that's why you got to know what's at the bottom. What's at the very bottom of your fears. If you spiral, which everybody does, I think. Maybe not everybody. I guess a lot of people do. I sure do. Yeah, it just what changed the most for me in my relationship with Jesus is, again, not that I stopped having anxiety, but the way it happens entirely differently. So, yeah.
So I'm
going to have to do something silly real quick. Everybody, I'm going to have to move over so I can reach my power cord. I have to move my whole table. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Luckily, this didn't become one of those horrible
mishaps. Yeah, good catch.
Zoom mishap where it's like the guy's not even wearing clothes or whatever. So.
Oh yeah, dude, I've been wearing pajamas so much.
What it is. I didn't even know I had pajamas. Now every day I got them. So, yeah.
Well, before this, I went ahead and bought a few more pairs, and I've been really getting the use out of them. And not even on purpose. It's not like I make a decision. Today I'm going to wear pajamas. It's just like the day just kind of happens to me, and it's just like that's what 10 hours later, I'm like, well, this is who I am now.
Yes.
So
luckily, handing out food has got me in a little bit of a rhythm since we've been doing the food thing. I try not to show up in my Yoda onesie or whatever, but yeah, it is just crazy.
You said your schedules are kind of like staggered. So I mean, are y'all getting to spend much time together right now, or how's that working out?
I mean, yes and no, right? That's what's so weird. Like, we're around each other all the time. It's just, you just don't have the same kind of time. It's like, you see each other more. You're more a part of each other's everyday life. I don't know, I'll just speak for us, but I think sometimes you gauge quality time based on, are we being entertained? And I don't know, for thousands of years, that wasn't the gauge. And people still had great marriages and great relationships. So, does it stink that there's less time for entertainment? Is it hard watching some of your friends post that they've watched, 10 hours straight of television and you got to keep grinding? That's another weird thing about this. Some people have never had less work, and some people have never had more work. And that's weird too. It's just hard not to be jealous. You're like, you watch TV? That sounds awesome. But instead, it's like, how can we appreciate working together? How can we appreciate educating the kids together, raising the kids together? I mean, my daughter has been in preschool since she was 2, because mom and dad both had to work full time. So this is the first time I've really got to be a part of her education and her learning. And can we enjoy that together? I think we should be able to. I think we should be able to find fulfillment in our relationship as we do. things other than watching TV. So
My wife said she came across a post on Facebook where someone says like, "Hey, has anybody else's kids seemed to have like really calmed down since they've been home
yeah,
a lot?" And a lot
yeah,
of people were jumping on the bandwagon. I expected them to be like, "No, the kids are sick of each other. They're sick of me. We're all sick of each other."
yeah,
But no, it was actually to the contrary. That a lot of people were like, "My kid used to have like behavioral problems, and now they just
yeah,
chilled out," which could be for a lot of reasons.
right.
One, nutrition, and then two, quality time.
Hmm.
They're being raised by their parents and not raised by a teacher, in some sense.
Sure.
I mean, have y'all experienced
Yeah,
that as well? And what are the variables you think are?
yeah. I think personality is a little bit into it. My daughter is an extrovert. She has been since the moment she could have choices. She would choose people all the time. And so am I. And so her and I will get this sort of angst, it's almost like an anxiety. Like this, like, man, we need our people. And yeah, so we do. I mean, her and I are more likely to struggle than my wife and my son. But day in and day out, are we calmer? Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I would think so. Yeah, it, like you said, like it's different, but it's not necessarily bad. It doesn't have to be bad, even though it's different. And I mean, I'm speaking from a perspective of somebody who's been super blessed to be able to continue having employment. I mean, we've had hours reduced, stuff like that, but I mean, whatever. I mean, like you feel thankful for every piece of bread that goes in your mouth right now.
Yeah.
And it's just good perspective. And then like, whereas the kids, maybe you were constantly feeling agitated that they were in the way of you, completing everything. Now you're having time just to appreciate them and feel grateful that we're all alive and together, So I don't know, like the gratitude, I don't know if everybody's felt this, but there's been a rush of gratitude in my life. That's made all of life sweeter, frankly. So.
Yeah, and there's definitely Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a YouTube personality, and he runs his multi-million-dollar company. But he was saying, like, someone asked him, how do you stay so grounded and so real all the time, and how do you how are you able to cope with $1 million losses and stuff like that whenever you're making your business dealings? And he was like, legitimately, I contemplate at least one of my family members dying every week, and I really think on that so that I can have a good perspective on what $1 million loss means to me, as as whenever I hold that up to a familial loss. And
Right.
I think that's on a lot of people's minds right now. Like, what if, because one of the horrible things about actually dying from COVID right now is that largely you're going to have to die alone. Like, maybe
Yes.
you get the good
Yes, for
opportunity
sure.
of screen timing somebody or FaceTiming somebody,
Mm-hmm.
but largely you can't go and see them. You can't go and see the person that's dying of the illness. Unfortunately, they're surrounded by doctors, people they don't know. But that's just kind
Right.
of one of the horrible things about this. And I think that there probably is a sense of people really thinking like, like you said, gratitude. And, then the more gratitude comes back, the better. Because I think we've also
Mm-hmm.
lost a big sense of gratitude in our day-to-day lives. I think we've lost it to vanity and pride largely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to just tear into your kids when you're like, I'm so grateful you're here. It really just changes the way you behave. And so if we, have had more calm in our house, I think that's been part of it. So again, it's like there's a little more clarity when the pressure's on. Certain things like come into focus. And yeah, that's been a blessing.
yeah, definitely on my side, from my perspective as well. But it also it's weird because it's made the more stressful day-to-day stuff a little bit more stressful, but it's made the sweeter
Sure. Yeah.
so much more sweeter. It's weird how it's contrasted everything. Because I'm not saying that, like,
Right.
I'm all sunshine and roses all the time. No, I have like
Yeah.
I have my really stressed out moments and I say things that I shouldn't. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's just made those times just like I can't, but at the same time, it's weird because I bounce back from that faster. Like I bounce back
Sure.
to apologizing faster, and I bounce back to focusing on the good a lot faster. And so that's weird too. Like I don't stay annoyed or angry as long. And so it's, man, it's just been really weird.
Right. Right. Yeah. And yeah, thanks for that. Cause I didn't mean to make it sound like sunshine and rosy. You're right.
No, I didn't think you were.
There, but because you're right though, it's also a pressure cooker at home. And because everything's blended together, like the other day I had a really important call and my daughter was going crazy for something she didn't really need. And man, like you said, it's like, how can you not get the frustration? That's definitely a part of it. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I just, I hope that in the midst of this, something is developing too, though, you know, like better relationships are developing and deeper connections that maybe can handle some of the day-to-day stuff, you know, like maybe you're like,
I'm hoping
they'll finish in a second.
I keep the bouncing back from it faster aspect.
Right.
I hope I leave behind the it affecting me more aspect behind. But so kind of moving forward from this, like within your church, like what are you taking? What do you think you'll be taking from this experience forward after this is all over?
I think there is a tendency to kind of get, I don't know the right word, to get really dependent on amenities and I don't know, like just all the things that you like. Church is enjoyable. There's lots of comforts, even creature comforts. I mean, there's just all sorts of, but then like, I just hope we have myself being the first, I just hope we have a sense of reality. Like, they just strip all of this away. You could take anything. Again, go down the bottom. You take buildings, which some churches are going to lose in the midst of this. You can take all the amenities, all the nice stuff. But there's something good here. And like, if we can just see what's underneath all that, I actually think the church will be more vibrant and healthy than ever before. Kind of like this, we're talking about being stripped away with the family, like all this, and instead just appreciating it. And so, yeah, I hope it's even more about people. I hope it's even more about loving Jesus. I hope it's even more simple.
Yeah, and it's just such a big thing that I think this experience has really left its mark on people, is how much, and I'll make I saw a meme. It was like the day after quarantine is over, and it shows this guy that walks outside, takes a nice deep breath, and then walks back inside. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of me. And then another meme was, I can't wait till I can start canceling plans again. But I think which to me is hilarious and it's really relatable. But it's really highlighted how much people just need interaction. And it goes back to I think Unit 471 was the name of the book. I could be wrong about that, but it's basically about this Japanese science unit during World War II, and I think it was Japanese. It was either the Japanese one or the German one. Both of them were crazy, but it was the experiment to where they had like all these babies, and they wanted to basically experiment with them. They gave them everything they needed to survive: milk, food, whatever, except affection, except touch. And they all died, which is horrific.
Right.
But I mean, if that doesn't tell you how much we need those things, how much it's vital to us, which is probably another aspect of why we're all feeling so anxious in some ways. That, we're not, a lot of us aren't getting that kind of interaction with other people, and it's just
that's
really
good.
home how much we need each other.
That's good. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Relationships require a lot to maintain.
Yeah.
And it's not a trade we probably make enough, And yeah, like you said, man, what I give right now just to be with people.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, to your point, I did see a pastor joking the other day, like, how many books I've read, how many podcasts I've listened to try to convince people that they need community. Wow, I'm dropping the mic here. I'll see you at church, So yeah, but there's something to that for sure.
Yeah. Man, and we can go ahead and end it there, man. I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation. Definitely do this again sometime. But is there anything else you wanted to kind of like, end on?
No, thanks for having me. It's interesting, and I felt like I got to learn a little bit more about you and the podcast as we did it. So yeah, we always sign off with this line right now when we end our videos, just our hope is greater than our fears. And it's just a good reminder that I keep trying to tell myself, and it gets stressful and scary. Everything's unknown. You could work, you could go 1,000 miles per hour, work harder than anybody else in the world, and you still wouldn't have control over your environment right now. And if we can just embrace that and breathe, maybe we can find some peace in the midst of this. So that's my prayer, and that's my hope. And thanks for sharing your platform and your friends with me today.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Podcast.
You coming on, and like I said, I've really enjoyed our conversation. But yeah, man, we'll do this again.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Take it easy. Have a good one.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Later.